house are your brothers in? Asked Harry. Gryffindor, said Ron. Gloom seemed to be settling on him again. Mum and Dad were in it too. I don't know what they'll say if I'm not. I don't suppose Ravenclaw would be too bad, but imagine if they put me in Slytherin. That's the house you know who was in. Yeah, said Ron. He flopped back into his seat looking depressed. You know, I think the end of Scabbers' whiskers are a little lighter, said Harry, trying to take Ron's mind off the houses. So what do your oldest brothers do now that they've left, anyway? Harry was wondering what a wizard did once he had finished school. Charlie's in Romania studying dragons, and Bill's in Africa doing something for Gringotts, said Ron. Did you hear about Gringotts? It's been all over the Daily Prophet, but I don't suppose you get that with the Muggles. Someone tried to rob a high-security vault. Harry stared. Really? What's happened to them? Nothing. That's why it's such big news. They haven't been caught. My dad says it must have been a powerful dark wizard to get around Gringotts. But they don't think they took anything. That's what's odd. Of course, everyone gets scared when something like this happens, in case you know who's behind it. Harry turned his news over in his mind. He was starting to get a prickle of fear every time you knew who was mentioned. He supposed this was all part of entering the magical world, but it's been a lot more comfortable saying Voldemort without warning. What's your Quidditch team? Ron asked. I don't know any, Harry confessed. What? Oh, you wait, it's the best game in the world. And he was off explaining all about the 4 balls and the positions of the 7 players, describing famous games he'd been to with his brothers and the broomstick he'd like to get if he had the money. He was just talking Harry through the finer points of the game when the compartment door slid open again. But it wasn't Neville that told this boy, or myself this time. 3 boys entered, and Harry recognized the middle one at once. It was the pale boy from Madame Malkin's robe shop. He was looking at Harry with a lot more interest than he'd shown back in Diagon Alley. It's true. They're saying all down the compartment that Harry Potter's in this compartment. So it's you, is it? Yes, said Harry. He was looking at the other boys. Both of them were thick-set and looked extremely mean. Standing either side of the pale boy, they looked like bodyguards. Oh, this is Crabbe and this is Goyle, said the pale boy carelessly, noticing where Harry was looking. My name's Malfoy. Draco Malfoy. Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snigger. Draco Malfoy looked at him. Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford. He turned back to Harry. You'll find out soon that some Wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. He held out his hand to shake Harry's, but Harry didn't take it. I think I can tell who the wrong sort are for myself, thanks, he said coolly. Draco Malfoy didn't go red, but a pink tinge appeared in his pale cheeks. I'd be careful if I were you, Potter. Unless you're a bit politer, you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know it was good for them either. Hang around with riffraff like the Weasleys and that Hagrid, and it'll rub off on you. Both Harry and Ron stood up. Ron's face was as red as his hair. Say that again. Oh, you're going to fight us, are you? Malfoy sneered. Unless you get out now, said Harry, more bravely than he felt, because Crabbe and Goyle were a lot bigger than him and Ron. But we don't feel like leaving, do we, boys? We've eaten all our food, and you still seem to have some. Goyle reached towards the chocolate frogs next to Ron. Ron leapt forward, but before he did so much as touched Goyle, Goyle let out a horrible yell. Scabbers the rat was hanging off his finger. Sharp little teeth sunk back into Goyle's knuckle. Crabbe and Malfoy backed away as Goyle swung Scabbers round and round, howling, and when Scabbers finally flew off and hit the window, all 3 of them disappeared at once. Perhaps they thought there were more rats lurking amongst the sweets, or perhaps they'd heard footsteps, because a second later I had come back in. Oh, sorry, we've got to picture here as well. What has been going on? I said, looking at all the sweets all over the floor, and Ron picking up Scabbers by his tail. I think he's been knocked out, Ron said to Harry. He looked closer at Scabbers. No, I don't believe it. He's gone back to sleep. And so he had. You've met Malfoy before. Harry explained about their meeting in Diagon Alley. I've heard of his family, said Ron darkly. They were some of the first to come back to our side after you-know-who disappeared. Said they'd been bewitched. My dad doesn't believe it. He says Malfoy's father didn't need an excuse to go over to the dark side. He turned to me. Can we help you with something? You'd better hurry up and put on your robes. I've just been up to the front to ask the driver, and he says we're nearly there. You haven't been fighting, have you? You'll be in trouble before we even get there. Scabbers has been fighting, not us, Ron said, scowling at me. Would you mind leaving while we change? All right. I only came in here because people outside are behaving very childishly, racing up and down the corridors, I said in a sniffy voice. And you've got dirt on your nose, by the way. Did you know? Ron glared at me as I left. Harry peered out of the window. It was getting dark. He could see mountains and forests under a deep purple sky. The train did seem to be slowing down. He and Ron took off their jackets and pulled out their long black robes. Ron's were a bit short for him. You could see his trainers underneath. A voice echoed through the train. You will be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes. Please leave your luggage on the train. It will be taken to the school separately. Harry's stomach lurched with nerves, and Ron, he saw, looked pale and just freckles. They crammed their pockets with the last of the sweets and joined the crowd thronging in the corridor. The train slowed right down and finally stopped. People pushed their way towards the door and out onto a tiny dark platform. Harry shivered in the cold night. Then a lamp came bobbing over the heads of the students, and Harry heard a familiar voice. First years over here. All right there, Harry. Hagrid's big hairy face beamed over the sea of heads. Come on, follow me. Any more first years? Mind your step now. First years, follow me. Slipping and stumbling, they followed Hagrid down what seemed to be a steep, narrow path. It was so dark, either side of them, that Harry thought there must be thick trees there. Nobody spoke much. Neville, the boy who kept losing his toad, sniffed once or twice. You'll get first sight of Hogwarts You'll get your first sight of Hogwarts in a sec, Hagrid called over his shoulder. Just round this bend here. There was a loud ooh. The narrow path had opened suddenly onto the edge of a great black lake. Perched atop a high mountain on the other side, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, was a vast castle with many turrets and towers. No more in 4 than 2 a boat, Hagrid called, pointed to a fleet of little boats sitting in the water by the shore. Harry and Ron were followed into their boat by Neville and myself. Everyone in, shouted Hagrid, who had a boat to himself. Right then, forward! And the fleet of little boats moved off all at once, gliding across the lake, which was as smooth as glass. Everyone was silent, staring up at the great castle overhead. It towered over them as they sailed nearer and headed to the cliff on which it stood. Heads down, yelled Hagrid, as the first of the boats reached the cliff. They all bent their heads, and the little boats carried them through a curtain of ice which hid a wide opening in the cliff face. They were carried along a dark tunnel which seemed to be taking them right underneath the castle, until they reached a kind of underground hub, where they clambered out onto rocks and pebbles. "Or you there, is this your toad?" Hagrid said, who was checking the boats. "Traveller!" cried Neville blissfully, holding out his hands. They then clambered up onto a passageway in the rocks after Hagrid's lamp, coming out at last onto the smooth damp grass, right in the shadow of the castle. They walked up a flight of stairs and steps, and crowded around the huge oak front door. "Everyone here? You there, still got your toad?" Hagrid raised a gigantic fist and knocked 3 times on the castle door. We'll read the next chapter the next time we see each other. Bye!